Order the Tuesday, May 11th, meeting of the Common Council. Seating is limited due to social distancing requirements. Here's the phone numbers. Here it is. Okay. Public call-in number is 1-469-998-6201. When prompted, enter the following conference code, 342-631-867. Thank you. Chief Gallagher, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Cummings, could you call the roll?
Mr. Air.
Present.
Mr. Boyce.
Present.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Hampton.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor.
Present.
Mr. Swartz. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Ms. Wiles.
Present.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our April 27th meeting?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the April 27th meeting. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Motion to approve?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight. This is also a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Petitions or comments by citizens. There's a white card you can fill out front and bring it to Ms. Cummings if you want to speak about something on the agenda. If there are no comments from citizens, we will move on to council committee reports. Roads Committee.
Mr. President, the Roads Committee met on Friday, May 7th. Myself, Mark Boyce, Greg O'Connor, Darren Peterson, and Aaron Smith were all present. Several items on the agenda. The first was the committee heard an update from Keep Noblesville Beautiful. Mr. Peterson, the president of the Keep Noblesville Beautiful, and Jack Martin presented a report on the organization's activities in the past year as a condition of the $5,000 public purpose grant from the city for projects in each of the past 2 years. Also, the committee discussed street rehabilitation, the community crossing matching grants, the 2021 contract 2, the bids are out and the work is already underway on a lot of those projects. Alternates for that grant included alleys, which included but will be split for funding purposes. The work was expected to begin yesterday in the alleys. 156th Street between Gray Road and Hazeldale Road. This alternate bid will be awarded and scheduled for late June or early July. And approximately half of Whitcomb Ridge subdivision will be added to the contract. The other half was included in the Community Crossings Matching Grant 2021-1 application. Other items, Harriman Boulevard, Phase 3, part of the State Road 37, 146th Street project. Work south of 146th Street is ongoing. Construction is expected to be mostly complete by May 17th. Also, work north of 146th Street is expected to begin after the completion of the south portion. The city did reject a plan for full closure. The staff is working with the contractor to phase construction and possibly use night closure. Hamilton County projects, Kerrigan Road Bridge over Morse Lake. Construction is expected to last 120 days. The roadway is expected to be closed from March 1st, like it is, through May 30th. This is one update from that committee. The waterway will be closed on May 19th for 10 days for beam painting. Federal aid projects include the South Allisonville Road Trail. Construction expected to start in 2022. Little Chicago Road Trail over Morse Lake. This project is in the preliminary design phase. The construction is expected in 2023. Pleasant Street, upcoming events include the geotech work that's set to begin in June. And also representatives from the city will appear before the Indiana State Historic Preservation Review Board on July 14th. The board may make a decision that day. And Bowden Road, Bowden Road, 156th Street roundabout, the design is ongoing. Construction expected in 2022. And Downtown District, Streetscape Phase 1, design is ongoing. This project will bid in October of '21, and the construction is planned to begin in March of '22. Just some of the items before the Roads Committee. Mr. President?
Thank you. Any questions of the Roads Committee? Seeing none, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met last Thursday. Will Hampton, Greg O'Connor, Megan Wiles, and myself. Deputy Mayor Matt Light and Jeff Spalding discussed the new city vehicle excise surtax and wheel tax, which we'll be discussing and hearing some tonight. And Deputy Mayor Light had Jamie Yost, our IT director, talk to us about his efforts and some steps taken to control cost and optimize the city's technology resources. Mr. Spalding also discussed some of the fiscal and related actions on this meeting agenda for this evening. And the claims docket do come to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Davis? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the claims?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the claims in a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Motion passes. Okay, on to previously discussed ordinances. Council to consider ordinance 190421, an ordinance to change zoning from county zoning of A to S agricultural subdivision district and FH flood hazard district for approximately 155 acres to R3 single-family residential, R5 multifamily residential, and FH flood hazard district for property north of East 166th Street, west of Bowden Road, and south of State Road 38, all in Wayne Township. We will also go ahead and read council to consider ordinance 200421, an ordinance to change zoning for approximately 155 acres from R3 single-family residential, R5 multifamily residential, and FH flood hazard district, including the adoption of a preliminary development plan, an ordinance to R3, R5, FH PD for property located north of East 166th Street, west of Bowden Road, and south of State Road 38, all in Wayne Township, as amended. Denise Ashelman.
Hi. Good evening.
Welcome.
You first heard this item at your first meeting in April. It was heard by the Plan Commission and received a favorable recommendation, to adopt. Since that time, Lindsay and John Hughes have been putting in quite a bit of work with the applicants to go over an agreement relating to the sewer. Have we reached an agreement, Lindsay?
Yes, we have, Council. I had been working with Mr. Isaacs and his legal counsel up until about 30 minutes ago on finalizing the terms. I printed those out, and you should have a copy in front of you. High level, we have agreed to do some upsizing for their sewer. Noblesville will pay for the sewer from the Stony Creek Interceptor over to Bowden Road, and they have agreed to work with us on that. And I think they have some other amendments that they probably want to make tonight as well, but we would ask that you, if you decide to approve this rezone, that you do it subject to a sewer extension agreement with the terms in front of you being signed between the parties.
And one of the amendments that she mentioned is the original development plan. Shows these 42 lots on the east side of the William Lear ditch. They're actually voluntarily removing that from their petition. So their proposal tonight is to only do the development on the west side of the ditch. So this will bring their total down to, I believe it will be 305 units. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. O'Connor.
So Denise, the lots on the east side of the ditch, is that language, is it reflected in what we're approving or
It is actually,
contemplating?
it's actually in the agreement that Lindsay handed out there.
This agreement?
Yes. They will have to amend their preliminary development plan to reflect that, but yes.
Does it have to go back to Plan Commission as a result?
Yes, I think it does, if they're going to amend their proposal. Have we approved through
We-
council without going back to plan commission, though?
What we've allowed council to do is approve, and then it goes back to Plan Commission for affirmation.
Okay.
I think the other project you'll be familiar with that did this is Havenwood. It had to go back for affirmation.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
I was trying to find traffic study, not just for Bowden and 100, but Bowden Road corridor. That's what concerns me about this, adding another 6 or 7. I was trying to find one for the corridor, not for the intersection, but has there been anything done there?
I'm gonna let Ally
Okay.
Krupski address this, since she's here, instead
That's
of
a
me
little
trying
bit
to
at the
play for
retreat.
traffic.
Yeah, we did discuss it.
So the Bowden Road corridor is currently being studied all the way from State Road 38 to 146th Street, and we have upgrades already committed. Let me think. So 156 in Bowden is going to be upgraded to a roundabout. 166 in Bowden is upgraded to a roundabout in 2026, and the state is upgrading State Road 38 in Bowden Road next year, or in 2023. So all of these improvements are already programmed. The corridor itself is under a 40% design right now, and so the USI is doing that design, and once we get funding, we will improve it. The traffic data itself from capacity, we are in a good place. The major issues on that road from a accident standpoint are at the programmed intersections that we're already improving. For the Bowden Road corridor, so yes, along all of the areas that are undeveloped, yes, we will need that additional right-of-way. Yeah, we will need it, yes, and I believe they will be dedicating that.
Part of the agreement that we discussed and that you have in front of you, once MI takes title to that property, they will dedicate that right-of-way. And if we need it earlier, they have agreed to work with the current owner to dedicate that right-of-way.
Anything else?
Any questions? For staff? No, the petitioner is here. Would the petitioner like to make a few comments? No? Yes?
Good evening.
This way.
Name's Sam Swafford, associate at the law firm of Fager Drinker. Happy to be here this evening representing MI Homes. Here tonight with MI is John Isaacs, and the only thing I wanted to add is just that MI is supportive of the conditions of approval that are set forth in the agreement that are before you. And that's all that we have, and happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Any questions for the petitioner? If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance 190421. We got to amend the second one. The second one.
Amend the second one. Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance 19-04-21 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve ordinance 190421 and a second. Ms. Cummings, would you call the roll?
Mr. Air,
Nay.
Mr. Boyce,
Nay.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Hampton,
Nay.
Mr. O'Connor,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Wiles,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
The ordinance is approved with 5 ayes and 3 nays.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to amend ordinance 200421 as presented?
So moved.
Second. There's a motion to amend ordinance 200421 as presented and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor of amending, raise your right hand. 7-1.
President,
Yep.
I would move that we approve ordinance 20-04-21 as amended and subject to the execution of the sewer agreement through the Board of Public Works, consistent with the term sheet that was presented to us this evening.
Second. There's a motion to approve ordinance 200421 as amended and a second. Ms. Cummings, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Boyce? Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Nay.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Smith? Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Nay.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
The ordinance, 6 ayes, 2 nays. Your ordinance is approved.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance. I was going to say, do I need to wait? Are you okay? Council to consider ordinance 300421 and ordinance approving additional appropriations in the general fund. Sam Barris.
Thank you, council members. Sam Barris, Office of Finance and Accounting. This is, as mentioned, an additional appropriation that would authorize the fire department to spend $1.4 million to do some renovations to Fire Station 74. Since this action was discussed at the last council meeting, I will leave it there unless there's any questions for me or for the fire department.
The matter of public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Mr. President, seeing no one come forward, I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion to close the public hearing and a second for ordinance 300421. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would move that we approve ordinance number 30-04-21 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve ordinance 300421 and a second. Ms. Cummings, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. President, you have 8 ayes, 0 nay. Your ordinance is approved.
Thank you. Council, so new ordinances for discussion. Council to consider ordinance 310521, an ordinance to modify the Uniform Development Ordinance regarding Section 8 zoning districts to create a State Road 32 overlay, Phase 1.
Motion to introduce?
David Herschel. Wait, I need a second on that.
Second.
Second? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Please hold. What, should we go ahead and finish this one?
The agenda.
No, you're out of
Yeah,
order.
you're out of order, okay. No, you're out of order.
Just go back.
Council,
We are out of order.
okay,
David
proposed
will
development
wait.
presentation. All right, we're gonna back up. Council to consider introductory information for the proposed Magnolia Ridge plan development containing approximately 153 acres adjacent to East 161st Street and 171st Streets and east of Mill Creek Road, Seminole Road. Mark Graddison, developer.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Mark Graddison, Graddison Land Development. Office is 6330 75th Street, Suite 156, Indianapolis. Good evening. Maybe first off, public announcement, public service announcement. If anyone on the council or anyone in the audience received an email from me this morning around 11 o'clock, had a document attached, please do not open it, as my email was hacked by someone really, really good today. So just a little public service announcement. I am here for an introduction and maybe more appropriately a reintroduction of Magnolia Ridge. This is a project that we have been working on for 6 or 7 years now, and we have been working with staff over the last couple of years as it relates to infrastructure in the area and traffic, and we think we have a good resolution for that, and we've been working diligently towards that over the last few years. Excuse me. This project is located, and this is maybe not coming in very well, but it is located in between 161st Street, 171st Street, between Mill Creek and the Vestal Ditch in this location. So we'll give you a little better look at it here. This is 171st Street up here, 161st Street down on the south side. Yeah, 161st Street down here. And our project is in the red outline there. The key component, as we'll see here in the project plan here shortly, is that we are able to add 20 acres to the north and have our northern entrance off 171st Street versus having a western entrance off of Mill Creek Road, and therefore alleviating almost all of the traffic onto Mill Creek Seminole and the S-curve that is there. We have been working with staff. We've presented a traffic study from A&F Engineering, and staff and Matt Brown from A&F have been going through that and tweaking little things and answering questions, and we will have a full traffic study completed here in the next few days, I'm sure, as we follow up through those communications. Here's a better look at the plan itself. Again, 171st Street on the north, 161st on the south there. So get most of it in there. So we have the difference, one of the differences with our plan today is that we have two builders now. We have Lennar, as well as we also have Pulte that was with us the last time we were working on this project. And so now with two builders, we will have 6 different products available in this neighborhood. Instead of just a typical 1 or 2 or 3 from a single builder, we now have a much wider variety. In that variety, starting at the south end, we have an empty nester product with 2 different size lots that Pulte will build here. There's roughly 70 of those. And then as we move north, we have the crossings and landings products. That is going to be Pulte. We have moved our amenity center into the central location of the neighborhood. And then the green area is the venture product from Lennar, and then the purple area is the cornerstone product from Lennar there. As you can see, we have 347 is the total units on this 153 acres. We have 38% roughly of open space, 55 acres of open space included in there, which will help us from keeping the infrastructure down the best that we can. As far as the products go, just real quickly buzz through these for you. This is the empty nester product from Pulte. That'll be on what we call Area C. We have Lennar's venture product, which is currently being constructed in a couple locations as well here. In Noblesville, we have the cornerstone product. We have Pulte's, their crossings product here, and then also the Pulte landings product, which is a new front load product, relatively new product here to town. As far as the amenities and such, and the monumentation for the neighborhood, we are roughly following where we were before, with nice entry signs at the north and south entrance to the neighborhood. And then, as we mentioned, the amenity center will be a pool, kid pool, as well as playground and a bathhouse included in that area. One of the main focuses that we really are trying to make sure we have a lot of, which is the trails. Key component here, we would like to be able to connect to the trail system to our west, or sorry, to our east. that is along the Vestal Ditch here. And then that will give us the direct access up to the Midland Trail and for folks to be able to get to downtown Noblesville through that system. As I had mentioned, there are some trails, certainly in Midland Overlook to our north, our entry will abut as well, so folks could go through the regular sidewalk system to get across the street and over to that trail. And just real quickly, we also have plenty of buffer space that we've included. As we had in our original proposals, we have a 50-foot buffer on the right-of-way area along Seminole Mill Creek, as well as against the neighbor that we have down on the south that's the closest to the project. And with that, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Brian Ayers.
Mr. Gratis, I think we talked in the past, and this, about 5 years ago, I believe Seminole Road was a $8 million fix. I don't know what it is now. Have you addressed that at all? Because I know that was a big concern.
Well, so the biggest way that we've addressed that is that by having the access point to the north on 171st Street, and via the traffic study, we have almost completely eliminated the traffic from our neighborhood going on to Seminole Road. So literally 1%, 1.5% of our traffic will ever hit that area.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Webb.
Radisson, we talked through this, so if you shared this with me and I don't recall it, I apologize. But with the trail system, are you planning to cross over that ditch and create a bridge so there's that connectivity, or?
We would love to be able to have that connectivity. Our property line does not go to the ditch, so we were going to need a little bit of help or some communication with the Cherry Tree Meadows neighborhood to the east in order to be able to have that access point. So if we owned all the way over to there, we certainly would do that. We can get to our point, and then maybe with staff, we can work with them in trying to find the ability to be able to have that connectivity piece.
I had a question on the amenities. It looks like the amenities for 2 subdivisions is just in one. It looks a little light on the amenities for this many homes. And with the size of home, I guess there'll be a lot of kids in this neighborhood, and it just looks light on the amenities. That's my comment.
We do have 70 empty nesters.
Okay.
So that will help a little bit on that side of things. But
So we need pickleball
we would
courts.
plan to, and that's one of the comments that we've heard. So possibly try to squeeze a pickleball court in. We haven't worked into that yet at this point, but we certainly will look into.
It looks like 200 of the lots of the 346 are under 60 feet wide.
Yes.
Okay.
And so with the large amount of open space, we've condensed it a little bit, which will help from an infrastructure perspective of being able to, from the maintenance of that long term, by having a little bit smaller lot, we're able to reduce the long-term cost for the city on the infrastructure.
Yeah.
That is one of my big concerns also. It looks like you're awful dense. I don't know what your density numbers are, but, the majority of your lots are under 56 feet or.
Well, with the large amount of
60
open
and-
space, we're in the neighborhood of about, from a gross perspective, we're in the neighborhood of about 2.2, 2.25 per acre.
And I understand the open area, but that doesn't help when you compact all these in and where they're gonna park and where the family's gonna park at Christmas. That is a pretty good concern, a major concern I have, is the density you have there along with Seminole Road.
Did you say along Seminole Road?
Along with Seminole Road.
Okay, sorry. Understood. I mean, we've been working through that. We can have further discussions there.
I also had a little bit of a concern about 2 entrances to this many homes this far apart. I'm sure when it goes through TAC, if there's fire department has any comments on emergency exits out to Seminole.
And we have that ability to add that at these 2 cul-de-sacs here, if the fire department so desires.
Great. It looks like you have a connection to a future neighborhood to the south, too.
Yes, we do. If for some reason that ground adjacent to us, the Marks family's ground, if that does get developed, we'll dedicate that right away for them to connect that road system.
Any other questions? Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you.
Okay, now, new ordinances. So we've already introduced it. Do I need to do that again?
Might as well.
Might as well. Okay, council, do I have to read it again? Council to
Go for it,
consider
yes.
ordinance 310521, an ordinance to modify the Uniform Development Ordinance regarding Section 8 zoning districts to create a State Road 32 overlay, Phase 1.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
There's a motion to introduce ordinance 310521 and a second. Mr. Herschel.
Good evening, members of the council. So we have before you tonight a new zoning overlay ordinance proposed to run along both sides of State Road 32 from the Noblesville's western planning jurisdiction at Moontown Gray Road to the vicinity of Cherry Tree Road. You can see barely the outline of the district here. The distance is over 2.9 miles over that length. On the north side of State Road 32, the boundary is 600 feet north of the State Road 32 right-of-way line. That mirrors Westfield's State Road 32 overlay in their jurisdiction. On the south side of State Road 32, you'll notice that the district is proposed to extend 1,200 feet south of the State Road 32 right-of-way. And that is, the purpose of that is to incorporate Midland Trace, which you can see very faintly just above the boundary line. So Midland Trace runs just north of that boundary. South of Midland Trace would have 200 feet of buffer. We think that's important to include Midland Trace. It does not extend Westfield's treatment of the overlay, but we do think it's important to include that. As you know, zoning overlay is enacted by its own ordinance. They supersede the regulations of the UDO. If the proposed ordinance is silent on any particular aspect, then control of that issue reverts back to the UDO. So the zoning classification of the underlying parcels would remain the same, of course. And if adopted, the designation would simply tack on the State Road 32 designation after R1/State Road 32. We do have four purposes for the establishment of this ordinance, or the request to adopt this ordinance. First, to achieve a specific character along State Road 32 through the built environment. Second, implementation of safety improvements by reducing direct vehicular access to State Road 32. Third, enhancement of pedestrian and vehicular movement between parcels without accessing State Road 32. And lastly, we want to establish some type of human scale between the urbanization to the north of Midland Trace, and as you progress to Midland Trace, a more pedestrian type of character. Any development proposing to locate within the jurisdiction or the overlay would be required to follow the current UDO procedures for plan developments. That gives staff and the boards a lot of discretion to fashion what they would like to see in the corridor. So again, the procedure would simply be a plan development type of hearing. I mentioned a few purposes for this ordinance. One is related to access and access control. So a few of the examples, I mentioned the cutting down of access directly from State Road 32. That's for safety reasons. We would request to establish an access road behind the units, or behind the development along State Road 32. It would be similar to that seen along State Road 37, to the east of State Road 37, just south of Pleasant. You have access behind the buildings there. We would seek cross-access easements between properties upon development, and a 30-foot wide transportation corridor. This graphic is a little confusing at first. Let me point out, the darker lines are the actual trails on the roads. Trail corridor is 30 feet wide here. These are trees, if you can recognize the circles there, those are trees. So it would be a 30-foot wide corridor. The transportation corridor would be maintained on private property as an easement, as opposed to being dedicated to the city. Westfield requires dedication of the corridor to the city itself, and the city maintains that 30-foot corridor. They do so, from what I gather from talking to Westfield planners, so that the landscaping is pretty consistent along the corridor. We think as a staff that it's better to require that 30-foot transportation corridor as an easement within private property rather than have them dedicate that 30 feet to the city. We have landscaping requirements and standards in this proposed ordinance, so we don't think the change in landscaping from one property to another is going to be that great, and so for that reason we propose a landscaping easement within each property, or the transportation corridor easement within each property. This ordinance does have a number of design standards that are featured heavily. In fact, they take up most of the pages in the ordinance. They're taken directly from Westfield's requirements, so keep that character that's seen in Westfield along State Road 32 basically the same. What is new is the design standards that for the properties that would front on Midland Trace. Those are completely new. We do have design standards for building elevations, roofs, building entrances, some interior features, windows, drive-throughs, building materials, and accessory buildings. One of the most debated aspects of this proposal was the height and square footage of buildings along State Road 32. I've provided in your packets some examples of square footage of buildings. And I hope they helped a little bit. As you look through those examples, we found as a staff that you come to a point where you're saying to yourself, this is not really acceptable along State Road 32. And as you go down in the square footages and height, you say, okay, this is okay along State Road 32. So the figures that you see here, basically in summary, the maximum building height and square footage would be 5 stories and 100,000 square feet along State Road 32. That's where we started to see that would probably be acceptable as opposed to a 9-story building. So I hope that those illustrations helped you a bit. Note that in the ordinance, the height of proposed buildings is proposed to step down from State Road 32 to the Midland Trace. That's only for non-residential buildings. So residential buildings, for example, could be 5 stories abutting Midland Trace with required setbacks, of course. That would allow for establishment of residential units, multifamily units along the trail. We also decided that, well, you may know that Westfield doesn't have a height requirement or a square footage requirement in their ordinance. We didn't think that was the way to go on this, if simply for giving some guidance to developers. But requiring no maximums is probably not the way to go, so we did end up, as you see on this page. I mentioned that some of the buildings along, or the developments along Midland Trace would be required to make connection with the trail. We have some examples of that. There would be a required front door or a ground level door facing Midland Trace for those properties abutting the trail. They would be required to provide covered bicycle parking. There would be a limit on the wall length along the trail. I think the maximum wall length along the trail is 80 feet, and then if the building was longer, it would have to angle itself at more than 60 degrees. There would be required windows along the trail and an access easement to the trail. So the intent, rightly or wrongly, is to come up with something like this. This might be an example of what the trail looks like. I would caution you that the permanent improvements wouldn't be allowed that close to the trail, so the buildings would be set back at least 40 feet from the trail. But the intent is to encourage higher use of the trail over time, which would reduce car dependency along State Road 32. I think I'll end there. Plan Commission did review this ordinance and recommended approval by unanimous vote. I'm happy to answer any questions.
It sound, oh, go ahead, sir. It did sound like the whenever we see an overlay like this, have you reached out to the development community to make sure it's not onerous and?
We've heard from some developers. In fact, there is a developer that's proposing a development along State Road 32 in Hazeldale, I believe. And I think from what I've heard, he's fashioned his development according to these guidelines, even though this has not been adopted yet. Sure.
The prohibited uses, we have several of those already existing.
Right.
On State Road 32. And I'm assuming they would be allowed to continue to exist, and in the event they sold and continued as they were, that it would be acceptable. They'd be a non-conditional use.
Of course.
Or
Legal non-conforming.
Non-conforming use,
Yeah, yeah.
right. But they would be all, and then in the event that somebody wanted to consider a prohibited use, they could always address the council for reprieve from this. Is that correct?
They would have to amend this ordinance if you adopt it this way, yes. Yep.
Other questions?
Mr. President, just one. David, if you go back to your original slide that showed the 1,200 feet and the 600, was it 600 feet? Trying to see how much of that incorporates the promenade property, so it's 600 feet of frontage. We probably already have a PD ordinance in place for that, I think, don't we?
I believe so, yes.
So what would supersede what?
The previously adopted ordinance would supersede this ordinance. Yeah.
Thinking about potential conflicts, but
Sure.
I guess is my question.
Other questions? Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Council to consider ordinance 320521, an amendment to adopted ordinance 28997 for Prairie Lakes Planned Development regarding canopies for Jagger's Restaurant at 14570 Monday Drive.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Joyce Ann Yelton.
Good evening. This item before you is again for the Jaggers Restaurant that is located in the Prairie Lakes development. If you're familiar with this location, you would have State Road 37, 146th Street. This is basically Mundy Drive coming in. This would be the second entrance, and this is the location of Jaggers. They are proposing to basically provide canopies on the building and also along their drive-through in order for their employees to take orders. And by the time they get to the window, they would be ready for pickup. They are proposing that these canopies, again, would basically be bronze in color. They will have heaters and fans underneath them. Those also have to basically be the same color. This item was sent to you from the Plan Commission with a favorable recommendation for adoption by a 9-0 vote.
Any questions? Yeah.
The canopies, I assume they're incorporating the signs into the canopies, and they do meet our sign ordinance? Or what
Okay,
was
so,
approved?
oh, the size,
The
yes.
signs, yes.
There won't be any signs on these canopies. No, no. You can, this is pretty difficult to see here, but this is one of the canopies here.
Oh, the canopy is running below the sign,
Right.
okay.
And then your other canopy is located out here in the drive-through.
Mr. President, is there a pass-through lane on the outside of the canopy? I think there is. I can't.
I can't tell you.
I'm trying to remember the space.
They have just recently, if you've been out there, they have just recently basically reconfigured this whole area. There was a small portion of the original lot that they earlier had purchased, and they have extended their drive-through to basically come down here. Before, it used to run adjacent up here to the building. So now they've added basically additional parking, and the drive-through comes through here. And then there are 2 lanes that basically go around to the building at the pickup window.
It appears, though, that it appears that the bypass lane is now a parking, that you're delivered to your door. You cross the traffic, and it's delivered to the door. Okay. I'll go ahead and say it. We saw this project like this before. I'm uncomfortable with this many people out in traffic and traffic stopping, and now we're crossing a lane. I don't have a problem with canopies. I just think this is this has a safety concern for me as a general practice. So that's my comment.
Mr. President, just
Yes,
a
Mr.
question. So are the canopies in pink?
Yeah, the areas where the canopies will be are
Okay.
located in pink.
I need to go over and take a look at this again, because
So they're not attached to the building.
Well,
One
these
is.
these
One is.
are
Oh, that
on
would be.
the north side. This one is not. This is a freestanding. This is very similar to what Chick-fil-A does.
He's
Right,
got-
right.
This doesn't seem to have the same width in the center where someone is standing taking your order as Chick-fil-A, but again, it's.
There is a representative in the
Oh, sure.
if he would like to come
Thank you.
forward to speak.
Good evening. My name is Michael Keaton. I live at 10588 Winghaven Drive here in Noblesville. I work for Texas Roadhouse Restaurants. Strategic Restaurant Concepts is a subsidiary that owns Jaggers. This was our first restaurant that we built, Jaggers. We're making modifications to the restaurant because we've done a lot of learning here in the past 5 years. And part of that, and part of the reason why we have restructured the site plan, purchased the property next door, is because if you looked at how shallow the site plan was initially, we would get stacking into 146th Street, fortunately, because we were popular. So in order to resolve that, we looked at Chick-fil-A. I've been around the country, and I've looked at several different layouts that Chick-fil-A has utilized. They're 50 years old, and I'm not proud to say that we have copied them. So at this particular location, ideally we would, there are 2 double lanes there. There is a 3-foot buffer, and there will be pylons in the middle of that to keep traffic from crossing over. And we'll be able to move those pylons when we're not busy. We don't expect to have 2 lanes of traffic right there. We were pinned up against the right-of-way on, that would be the north side there. So we were pinned up against it for the positioning on the building. Yeah, the canopies are really to protect our employees in inclement weather. This takes the issue we have with traffic backing up onto 146th Street out of play.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are your employees currently out there taking orders without a canopy, or have they been?
It's pretty bad, you know, where we get busy enough when it's 5 degrees outside in the wintertime, or when it's raining, there's really no way to protect them. So we are seeking to do essentially what Chick-fil-A has done. We chose this layout and looking at the Chick-fil-A down the street here in Noblesville for a couple of reasons. That's a what we call a double circle drive-through. You come onto the site, you circle the building, and you double circle, and you leave. So that creates 2 it's counterclockwise, so one lane is the drive-through, one lane is the pass-through, and there are cars backing out. And I don't know if you've been there before, but if you tried to back out of those spaces, on the north side of that, anywhere on that property, frankly, it is difficult at best. So we wanted to take our customers, we were more concerned about the customers' ingress and egress to the building. That's why we designed this horseshoe-shaped parking lot and then move the drive-through to the outside to keep them away. I understand your concerns about our employees, and we're building this for our employees. So it's a controlled, slow environment. People do use their cell phones and look at their cell phones, but we run a manager out there in other locations. We now have one of these in Greenwood, and we have another one in Louisville, and we're building 5 more here in Indianapolis, 5 more in Louisville, and we're building 10 in Oklahoma City and northern Texas. So we're pretty busy with the concept right now, and we are figuring it out. We spent a lot of time doing a lot of research of our competitor, primarily Chick-fil-A, because they do heavy volume, and we would love to duplicate that. So that's a lot of our rationale for this. So along with this overlay here, we're also doing a remodel of the inside of our restaurant ergonomically. So we're making a substantial investment in this location.
What percentage of your customers were dine-in versus window traffic pre-pandemic and post-pandemic?
It was about, well, I would say it's probably about 40% dine-in, 60% drive-through, and obviously that changed significantly with the pandemic. We will continue to keep our dining room open. I think some of our competitors have selected to not do that, and they may not even do that. And I've looked at our Chick-fil-A, they're building restaurants now with no dining room because we think a lot of our customers have been conditioned through this pandemic to not want to come in the restaurant.
President, you briefly mentioned it at Planning Commission, but I thought it was an interesting fact. Why did you pick Noblesville?
Because I live here.
Well, and specifically this location.
Because it's a cross-county road. It goes all the way across the county. You get a lot of cross-county traffic. I had a lot of head-scratchers because people didn't believe me when I put it in 5 years ago. And then stuff started to happen across the street, the new development. I live here. I understand Noblesville. I understand how people travel. Hamilton Town Center already has restaurants there, and we were looking for some exclusivity. We're not on the 37 corridor. I'm glad I didn't put it on the 37 corridor, given what's going on today. So we were looking to catch that traffic, and that's really the reason why I picked it.
The northern exit will be, the northern part of that will be exit only then?
Correct.
Nobody will be able to get out of line?
Potentially. We don't anticipate that being, this just shows demonstratively the cars that would stack there.
Right. But if you're in there, I don't have any problem with that. So you're coming in and out on the gray, right?
Correct.
Yes, and those are both in and out, or is one in and one out?
No, that's 24-foot drive aisles, directional either way.
It's both either way.
Right.
And then they'll park in the center and against the building, right?
And against the building, right. So they don't end up crossing the drive-through traffic.
And they're not in the your drive-through traffic's out and away from it.
Out and away from, that was our intention.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you purchased more land and make that, they're not right up against the building. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's it's always, it's a dilemma with counterclockwise drive-through traffic on a fast food restaurant when there are customers crossing through that traffic and people aren't always focused with cell phones today or kids in the car, whatever is distracting them as people pass through. So before we would keep a manager out there to make sure that people could get in and out of the building without.
This will alleviate that.
It alleviates it.
Right.
It does.
Yeah, right.
Any other questions?
President, just one. Mr. Keaton, what is I'm just curious, but what's the increase in throughput when you put these drive-through lanes in? How many more customers can you move through there?
It really depends. So we don't know. We're hoping it's more. But I mean, to be honest, we don't have a scientific study on that. We are redesigning our kitchen and the ergonomics of the way our food flows through the kitchen to the window, basically the manufacturing facility. So we're redesigning that so that it could be quicker. Right now, we do a transaction about every 45 seconds at the window. It's slow. It's relative to Chick-fil-A, which they were doing about 150 transactions through their window here. And with their new design, with their drive-through, they're approaching 300.
300 a minute?
300 an hour.
Now,
300 an hour. It depends on the food. We have a different food. They have a prepared chicken. We're dropping hamburgers, you know, and you have to cook a hamburger. That's a lot of that's the stack to our canopy where we take the order. That's designed so when they make the order, by the time they get to the window, the food is done. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you in 2
Thanks.
weeks. It's a lot of chicken. Council to consider ordinance 330521, an ordinance for a change of zoning from sub-district professional office to sub-district West Logan Street corridor, a part of the Federal Hill Plan Development District, south of Osborne Street between John and Nixon Streets and north of State Road 32.
Motion to introduce?
second?
And we'll also read, council to consider ordinance 340521, an ordinance for a cut and fill in the FH Flood Hazard District and the adoption of a primary development plan for the village of Federal Hill, a part of the Federal Hill Plan Development District south of Logan Street, east of Nixon Street, and part of Federal Hill Commons.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
Yum.
Item 1 is the area that we're going to talk about first, and that is the first ordinance, number 33. Item 2 is the area that will be the second ordinance. But the first ordinance basically deals with what we call a change of zoning for the underlying zoning, the sub-district that we have within the West Logan Street planned development area. The area here that is outlined in pink is currently noted as professional office. The area that we would like to change it to is basically the melon color or the salmon color that basically is surrounding it, and that is the Logan Street district. The basic difference between those two districts is that the Logan Street district would allow for residential uses where the professional office district does not. The second item, which again is the area here that is adjacent to Logan Street. It is currently a part of Federal Hill Commons. It is the area that is the surface parking lot. What is being proposed in that area, or this is phase 1, I should say, of the Federal Hill Commons. This again is just another aerial photograph showing the specific area that we are talking about. This is basically again, a small copy of the site plan. This is an area that they are going to build a parking garage in. Again, it will be a multi-story parking garage. It will be 5-story. It is intended to be surrounded by apartments and commercial uses. There will be approximately 126 apartment units consisting of studio 1 and 2 bedrooms, approximately 7,000 square feet of commercial, and approximately 300 parking spaces. Once the garage is completed, it will be owned and operated by the city of Noblesville. The comp plan does show this area as being part of the downtown, which should provide a mixture of residential, commercial, employment and entertainment areas. This is basically a plan that shows the building, the north and south building elevations. Again, it is adjacent to a primary arterial. It also is adjacent to a state highway. The overall village at Federal Hill There were several waivers that they basically were several waivers that they sought and were sent forward for approval by the Plan Commission. There was one stipulation made at the Plan Commission, and that was that all curb cuts to be approved by the city engineer that are under our jurisdiction, as some may not meet the setbacks from, I'm going to say, the intersection or access regulations as per the zoning ordinance. Again, this was sent to you with a favorable recommendation for adoption. Both of these ordinances were by the Plan Commission. And Justin Moffett is here to make a
Petitioner like to speak?
presentation, I assume? Okay.
Any questions for Joyce Ann Yelton? Encourage everyone to make a dry run before they come to the council. Vacation photos, just what we want.
That's the one that came up. Good evening, Justin Moffett on behalf of Old Town Companies. This conversation is about 3 years in the making. We have been working with the mayor's office diligently this last year to get to this day, and I would like to just walk you through a few details of the conversation and the work that we've done in partnership with the mayor's team and Mr. Hampton here through the plan refinement process. Just hit a couple highlights real quick. We really started engaging in a conversation with city leadership in 2018 about the possibility of partnering on a mixed-use project that would have a public parking component somewhere near the downtown. And we started looking at the west side of the river, knowing that that would be an emerging redevelopment area, and focused in on a place that used to house a Mexican restaurant that was in a state of disrepair. And I think you all have noticed that it's no longer there. So we at least checked one box on our commitment to the city and our project agreement in the last year. Our development plan really follows what we understand to be the Plan Noblesville Comprehensive Plan. And subsequently, we brought forward a project agreement that was approved by this council last year. That project agreement contemplated what we called a plan refinement process, and there was a panel put together that consisted of appointments from the mayor's office, the engineering office, and then the city council. So Councilmember Hampton graciously volunteered to serve on that panel, and we had a series of planning meetings weekly for several months to work on really refining details of the master plan. So we put together a conceptual plan and imagery to get to the point where we could basically create an economic development agreement, project agreement between Old Town and the city. And then we use this plan refinement process to really dive into the details of the development plan. One of the things that we discovered early in the process was that we needed to pay attention to some of the long-range right-of-way planning. The city engineer really brought to our attention some of the potential future roundabouts and setbacks, and so we really had to dive in and retool some of our early concepts, and we were glad to do so because I think that the end result will be a better plan for traffic flow in the downtown area. But that really resulted in some adjustments to the plan, and tonight we're going to discuss just high level the concept planning for phase one. A primary goal in breaking it into a two-phase project is so that we can preserve parking for the Federal Hill Commons area during the construction cycle. So what you see here highlighted is the project site is the phase one, and that allows us to bring forward a parking garage structure that will serve the visitors as a public parking garage to the Federal Hill Commons area. So this is precast garage that will be wrapped with multifamily units. The main level, kind of in the foreground, that has kind of an elevated plaza looking at the area that serves the farmers market and public events there, is a commercial component of the development. So this is largely, the same project that we shared a year ago. The major difference is we are now wrapping it on 4 sides. Initially, we had just the south face and east and west face wrapped with residential units, and then through conversations and or plan refinement process, we were able to add a layer of units along the Logan Street side of the project. This is from the southwest looking, from the southeast looking northwest. So this is what you'd see as you're walking from the amphitheater area towards the building. Part of the challenge with working within this flood area was elevating the building up 7 feet above the floodway, and so that also creates a unique opportunity to have that plaza area adjacent to the commercial space that would look down the park. We're in conversations with several restaurant groups that would love to be at that corner have that elevated outdoor dining space looking at the park. You also see to the right there a staircase that leads into the garage. There will be ramping there as well for ADA accessibility. In addition, there will be a series of elevators in the garage that serve the public. This would be the southwest angle looking northeast. What you see there at that corner, it would be our leasing office. Old Town has developed a partnership with Indianapolis-based coffee group, and we're doing our first project together. We're developing a residential village in partnership with Purdue at the Discovery Park District, and our leasing office also serves as a coffee shop, kind of community gathering space, and we're really excited about that. We think it will add some energy and excitement into the development day one, and so we're continuing that concept here with this project. So we're excited to add that component in as soon as the leasing office would open. Joyce Ann already shared just the 2D kind of flat images here just to outline materials, a mix of predominantly glass, brick, and just different hardy panel materials. A lot of balconies, outdoor living spaces, desired feature for most of our consumers, so wanted to make sure that every unit had an outdoor balcony space, something that's functional. You actually put a piece of furniture on it, sit out there, not just kind of a Juliet balcony, but something that would really be functional by the residents. Just the alternate elevations. Back to the beginning here, and then I wanted to just share just how the garage functions. You would enter at a single point of entry. It's again, 5-story garage, and it will have just over 300 spaces, and it will be wrapped on 4 sides with the main level here being commercial space. We have about 7,000 leasable square feet that would be for a retail tenant. And then the 4 levels of units over that main level space would be a mixture of studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units. And then this just gives you a sense of what phase 2 will include. We have another multifamily building that will also have our pool and an amenity area. We will incorporate a fitness facility into phase 1, but the pool area will be in the phase 2 of the project. So as soon as we get phase 1 complete and get the garage online and available for public use, we would be starting phase 2. So in the interim, phase 2 will be a large parking lot to serve guests to the Federal Hill Commons. You also see along the State Road 32 right away, we're showing a proposed office building in our plan refinement process. So we had discussions around seeking an office tenant. I think you're also aware in our project agreement, we left out that commercial pad from our TIF district for this project, knowing that we might, in partnership with the city, need to create some sort of economic development incentive to attract an office user. I think we all desire to see more daytime jobs in the downtown area, and so in partnership with the mayor's office, we've been actively seeking tenants for this space. So it's been a little kind of an off year for office development, and So we see things picking up now, and we've started having conversations with people that are really interested in the renaissance of downtown Noblesville. So that's been exciting to see a few local corporate players that are seeing all the activity downtown and excited about maybe relocating office to this space. So I think it's likely in the next 24 months we'll land a tenant for this space.
The gray building there, Justin, that's Blue Sky.
That is the massing for the Blue Sky building. Yes, sir. And again, here's just another angle of that image. So, yeah, we're excited to get started with the council's blessing, we hope, and I'll go on record saying that it has been a really a great process working with the mayor's staff through this plan refinement process. I think that's been a great tool to get to a finished product in a spirit of collaboration. So thank you for all the effort put in by the city.
Was discussion about the restrooms, where are those being relocated to? Restrooms are there now?
They do not show in this image. I believe on this, where it shows parks, they are in that space now.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there's still storage for parks somewhere in there too.
Yes, we have, I don't have it on this deck, but we have an enclosed storage area in addition to indoor bike parking. We think that having a lot of bike parking would be helpful for residents and visitors.
How many units are in the building?
123
Given
in this
that
phase
to-
one, and we'll add 93 in phase two.
That makes a net over 200 spaces for the public.
Yeah, I will add that in phase two, we do have a private parking podium, a garage podium, so most of the phase two residents will be parking over there.
President?
Yeah, Mr.
I just wanted to thank you for fully wrapping this. I think that, I know I'm new, so I haven't seen the early iterations of the project, but I think that the concept that we see today is an incredible improvement. I think it's gonna look great. Oh, and one more question. So does the Wendy's, that was another question I've received. Does the Wendy's go in the second phase?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are in the process, I think you're aware that we have purchased the Long John Silver site, so we are in title on that now. We have closed, and this might be bad news for some citizens of Noblesville, but
Mr. Smith is particularly distressed about that.
No, I'm not.
I apologize. So Wendy's corporate has been involved along with the franchisee, and all the construction drawings are done, and we're finalizing all the diligence with the REIT to transfer title right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Hampton, do you have any comments
No, I
about the
just,
process, since you were involved?
yeah, it was a process that, looks much different than when we started, and I think the wrapping, as Mr. Smith said, was part of that because of the walkability that Logan Street is now, but will really be when this is done. Yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of, something here and move it here, and we were doing a lot of work every week. And I like what was the final product here and I flexibility to move things, and kind of came in with an open mind and an idea, and you let it grow, and that was a great way to, I thought.
Yeah. I think it's a great template for moving development forward in the future.
I think it's going to be the space there, those balconies, being able to look over the park. It's going to be a real active, exciting place for people to live, and parking will just really help. I think people will park there, and I can't remember the final number as the actual public spaces after the residents. What is that number?
Yeah, we have a little over 300 in addition to the new on-street spaces, but phase one, we're expecting about 150 or so will be resident. So the goal was obviously at a bare minimum. We had to replace the surface there, and then obviously the goal to exceed that. So
It checks a lot of boxes. and thank you for your work.
If all goes according to plan, when's the first time when would a unit be available?
The goal is late summer of '22.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, I'll just make a comment that I will thank you as well for all of your work and collaboration with the city and helping to meet some of our goals. I think this is something that's just really going to enhance the park and really create that sense of downtown is across the river, and with that living and that connectivity, it's going to be fabulous. So thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Council to consider ordinance 350521, an ordinance for a change of zoning for a cut and fill in the FH flood hazard district located south of State Road 32, Connor Street, north of Maple Avenue, and east of White River.
Motion introduce.
Second.
And we will read this with council to consider ordinance 360521, an ordinance for a change of zoning to DMU downtown mixed use and adoption of a detailed development plan to be known as East Bank Mixed Use, south of State Road 32, Connor Street, west of South 6th Street, north of Maple Avenue, and east of the White River. Can I have a motion to introduce?
Motion to introduce.
Second.
Joyce Ann Yelton.
Good evening again. So
Good evening.
The first item on the agenda is basically a cut and fill operation for this piece of property. To give you a little bit of bearings, across the street here is the Judicial Center. This is State Road 32, Connor Street, South 6th Street, and Maple Avenue. This would be the cemetery. This piece of property here, basically, as you can see where we have the FH, they are basically doing a cut and fill operation in that location. They have also already, we have also already signed their, basically, letter that goes to FEMA and the Indiana Department of Natural Resources for officially changing this with a letter of map revision. So until we get that letter of map revision, this area that is currently zoned FH will not be, actually go to what will be downtown and ultimately to downtown mixed use.
What's the timing on the Lomars now?
They run in spurts. I mean, it really is interesting. Sometimes we get them, although they have been dealing with DNR for quite some time, we actually signed the official document probably at least 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. You know, I would say within, you know, the next, I would guess, hopefully 60 days.
Pandemic and people don't seemingly at the governmental level want, so don't want to slow them down.
The second part of this is basically, again, this same area. I will show you on an aerial photograph here. It is this area outlined here. It is for what was known as a downtown mixed use. In your packets, you received basically their detailed development plans, along with their elevations. I didn't pull out all 50-some plus pages for you, but this is basically a site plan that also shows landscaping that I like to put upside down I did this at Plan Commission too. For some odd reason, I like this to be upside down. I don't know why. So again, as you can see, basically, here are the buildings. This area here would be for commercial uses. This area here is a parking garage surrounded again by apartments. They have an amenity area that includes a pool. There is a dog park. There are also pickleball courts. Basically in this area. They are not disturbing the path that currently exists. I know that's been a question. That is still being maintained. These are basically elevations of the building. This is basically along Connor Street there. This is a west elevation. The east elevation, and of course the south elevation. And then this here is just I'm gonna say an actual perspective of what that building would look like crossing the bridge at Logan Street, or 32. I guess we don't have a bridge on 32, we have a bridge on Logan Street. So, again, this was sent to you with a favorable recommendation for adoption from the Plan Commission. And if you have any questions?
This building's 4 stories,
Yes,
so this is not as tall as other projects we have in town.
that is correct. In fact, they are not, as I recall, not seeking any waivers from any underlying zoning requirements.
Petitioner here, would the petitioner like to speak?
Yeah, well, Randy, oh,
Mr. Sherman?
yes.
Good evening. Todd May, J.C. Hart Company, offices at 805 City Center Drive in Carmel. I'm also joined by tonight with Johnny Hart from J.C. Hart Company and Randy Sherman, our architect, land planner with Weaver Sherman Design. Appreciate your time this evening. Like Justin's Federal Hill project, this has also taken several years, a very complicated project. It's taken a tremendous amount of cooperation with the city, the county, a private landowner, which is the old service station, and then, working with FEMA and DNR, with being next to a river, has its own complications, as you can imagine. But I will take just a second just to show some appreciation for working with the city. It's been a wonderful experience, starting with the mayor and Andrew and his staff, Sarah, Allie with their respective staffs, Mike Howard leading us through what's been a very complicated project. It's really clear there's just so much professionalism here, and obviously a lot of pride in making Noblesville a great place to live and one to be. If approved, East Bank would be a $50 million investment, potentially more as costs continue to escalate, unfortunately. A project that, very similar to Federal Hill in terms of its timing, we would look to get started here in the fall and then deliver units early 2023, late summer 2023. Obviously, we understand this is an irreplaceable location. We wanted it to be an iconic project, one that will stand the test of time and that we would be very proud of. It does have 219 units, 5,300 square feet of retail that we would hope to have a very exciting restaurant that would be a draw to this area. And obviously, all these wrap a 293 space garage, so you would not see the garage as well as you drive in. A very highly amenitized project, first class all the way, and delivering, as I mentioned, over 200 individuals and families to the doorstep of the square, which we think will be a great addition to the city and great for all the retailers in the square. With that, I think our team can answer any questions, but I would like to have Randy come up here and just kind of walk you through the building and how it's laid out.
Good evening, Randy Sherman, Weaver Sherman Design, offices at 6201 North Carrollton Avenue in Broad Ripple. Just as a real quick overview, as Todd mentioned, along Connor Street, we have the retail 5,300 square feet. It could be divided into up to 3 spaces. The goal is to have the storefront glazing wrap all sides of the front, have the ability to have outdoor sidewalk dining areas outside of the pedestrian way up along the curb here, which would also have landscaping. We'll have parallel parking along 6th Street and Maple Street here on the south. And then we'll have head-in guest parking down here by the clubhouse amenity area on the southwest corner of the site. We will be entering the parking garage from one single entry at the south. We will have at the grade level 20 open spaces for public parking for the retail, and then it'll be gated at approximately this location for the residents on the upper floors. Leasing office will be at this corner along with a mailroom here, and then a mailroom up here for the east building. These buildings are separated with a pedestrian way that will be landscaped and amenitized, an outdoor fire pit and courtyard for the residents in the middle of the two building spaces here. And then overlooking the riverfront, we would have a pool deck, grilling area, and large observation deck. And then along the riverfront here, we would have the bocce ball courts and pickleball courts, and then outdoor space for the pets in this corner. We would also have an exercise facility, public restrooms for the pool and the clubhouse area, Wi-Fi center, kitchenette, and we'll have in the parking garage at different levels some enclosed parking for bicycles for use of the trail and other amenities that we're still working through. The buildings themselves also have trash chutes to a common trash room inside the building, so the trash will be collected inside the building structures themselves. This trash room also serves through a back hall of the retail space, so it's all self-contained. Each building has 2 elevators in them at each corner, and there'll be a 4th floor walkway that connects the 2 buildings across the pedestrian way. And I'll give you a quick view of that. And so this walkway would connect at the 4th floor, allowing people parking in the parking garage in the east building or the west building to get over to the east building. And then real briefly, the concept here is that the east building, as it faces Connor Street, is replicating the width of the commercial bays that are found of the buildings on the square. And we would treat these architecturally as 2 separate building constructions with different material palettes to mimic the character of the blocks along the square. As we break the building with the pedestrian way, we start transitioning to something that's a little bit more contemporary, kind of working towards the architecture that we're going to see at Federal Hill. And then we are also walking down grade here to the riverfront. So the first floor of these units grows in height as we get to the river. We start out at a 10-foot ceiling and drop all the way down to almost a 14-foot high ceiling in these units along the riverfront. So these will be nice units here. All the units have the outdoor private balconies, and then as we wrap this corner where the Connor Street Bridge is kind of coming uphill, we've staggered triangular bay windows in these units so that we can look up and down the riverfront and then look from these units back into the square. So that is kind of one of the important aspects of our designs. We try and create as many corner units as possible with views up and down the streets instead of just out at the streets. So that adds a lot of impact to the people living in these units, being part of the city, and then for people walking and driving in the city, just seeing not just a flat facade, but a lot of movement and interest to the street. And I'll be here to answer any questions.
I appreciate on both of these projects that the retail is not an overwhelming amount of the project, that it maintains what's going on downtown. I am concerned, you did say you enjoyed working with Mike Howard. We don't hear that a lot, so I appreciate it. Sorry.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
I do have one question about the cemetery, and on the back side of this will be, I'm just wondering what access there is. Is there any parking going to be remaining for people to go there if they desire?
I don't have the overall site plan.
It's in our package.
It is, I couldn't tell what was left.
C3, it looks like Maple. It looks like Maple Avenue, you have some head-in spots, so it actually sits back a little
Yeah,
further.
so, currently,
There's some head-in
Maple
spots here.
turns right here, and we're extending, Maple a little bit to the south here and providing, I believe, about 10 head-in parking spaces right
About
here.
10, yeah.
Yeah. So there will be
Sam.
parking available there.
Those are public,
Yeah.
open.
Thank you.
How many parallel spots are there on Sixth?
Between Sixth and Maple, I think there's 22 that are parallel, and then there's an additional 10 that
10.
head in on Maple. So 32 site spaces total.
With the amenities that are on the western side of the project, you've got the pool, the grill area, an observation, and then you said bocce and.
Pickleball?
Yeah, there's a bocce ball and pickleball court right in front.
And so then where in relation is the Riverwalk?
So the River Walk will just be immediately west of those two courts here.
You go back to the first drawing, it was on that very first drawing that Joyce Ann showed. It's right here, it's right,
Oh,
it's still in
got it.
there. Yeah, it's still, it's.
So the,
Ms. Sheldon, is it in that packet there?
Is there access to the Riverwalk?
Oh, here we go.
Yes, yeah, right there.
Here we go. Okay.
There it is.
I'm doing your job up
Thank
here,
you.
Randy, come on.
Yeah.
and so will those pickleball courts be accessible to the public? Or those will be residential, it's a residential amenity only?
Residential.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's a walkway from the elevated deck here down to those courts that connects this direction.
And there's a connection straight to the trail there too, right? It looks
Yeah,
like.
so
Okay.
there's a second connection right here,
Yep.
and then there'll be a fire pit right there also.
Thank you very much.
The pickleball may end up in the river every once in a while.
I remember the question was asked at Planning Commission, but I can't remember what the answer was. For the retail in the northeast corner, where are you encouraging, or where are you envisioning customers parking? Would that be on-street parking? The garage has no customer parking, correct?
Well, we also have 20
Yeah.
public spaces in the
Oh,
ground
okay,
floor
okay,
of the parking
okay.
garage as well as the
Okay.
32 on the site.
Great, thank you.
Almost 50.
Yeah.
How many are there now? There's no parking on Maple or Sixth, is there?
There's some on Sixth.
But not.
Not much.
No, yeah, not much. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. President, I would just echo my comments of thank you very much for all of your efforts to work with the city and to create a project that I think really will be iconic on the east side of the river. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would just say that this is 10 years in the making, more or less. It's a terrific project. It is complicated, but the county garage will come up, and we'll look forward to seeing the units come out of the ground, but 2023 will be a big year, as will 2022, so it's exciting, you know, it's been a long time in the making, so glad to see it.
Thank you for your investment. Any other questions? Okay, thank you again. Council to consider ordinance 370521, an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance regarding Appendix F, Noblesville Construction Standards.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Joyce Ann Yelton.
Good evening again. This basically are text amendments, not only to the Unified Development Ordinance, which is what we're considering this evening, but they are amendments to what are called the Noblesville Construction Standards. And that would deal with things such as roadways, sanitary storm sewers, our SWIP planning or erosion control. All of that has now been placed into the city standards, the Noblesville standards. These standards have not been updated since 2008. So basically what they have done here is is updated the information based on industry standards today, clarifying some of the existing standards, and then including, again, like I said, the stormwater pollution prevention plan standards in here. We have those standards existing, but you had to refer to another document, so we just decided it would be easier for construction standards just to put those standards in this document. It was sent to you with a favorable recommendation for adoption, but since it's been sent to you, there has been an amendment made, and that amendment deals with an update to the drive width at the right-of-way table for residential uses. That was the amendment that was made to these standards, and I believe that that page has now been swapped out, and basically the new page has been put into the standards. And with that, I will ask if you have any questions. Hopefully not.
It sounds like Mr. Hellman kind of reached out to the construction community, and this was not an overburdening set of regulations. And it went to 29 pages. He explained they doubled the volume of the pages, but that was mostly a font size correction. This isn't double the amount of standards.
Right. And we actually, before we went to the 13-page standards, the standards we had prior to that, I think, were roughly 24, 25 pages.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Council to consider an ordinance 380521, an ordinance creating the Noblesville Wheel Tax Fund and imposing a municipal wheel tax.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Matt Light.
Good evening, President Peterson and council members. Matt Light, Deputy Mayor. I appreciate your consideration of the two ordinances that are related that are before you this evening. This, as I said in the Finance Committee meeting, this is the first significant financial step that we're asking the council to take on the Pleasant Street project. As you know, the Pleasant Street project is Mayor Jensen's #1 road infrastructure priority. And the project team's working diligently to move the project forward on a number of fronts, and this is critical in terms of moving the financial and funding strategies forward for the project. So we've looked at a number of different strategies and options for funding this project. And a new user fee or excise surtax isn't something that we undertake lightly, but we think that it's an appropriate component to an overall funding strategy for this very important project for Noblesville. The excise surtax and wheel tax, and these are two separate ordinances, but I'll point out that state law requires local units to adopt both of them together. And so you'll see two separate ordinances in front of you. They'll be recorded in two separate places. We have to create two separate funds, but they all go towards the same usage, which is to construct and take care of roads within Noblesville. This has been an available tool for local units since 2016, when the General Assembly passed a statute giving local units this option, and 12 cities throughout the state have taken advantage of that option since then to fund local road infrastructure, including Fishers within Hamilton County, Fort Wayne, and 10 others. So if this is approved by the council, it would start being collected in January 22 with each individual's registration renewals, and the amount and the vehicle types are listed in the ordinance, as well as the exemptions that would not be applicable for this fee. We continue to pursue other funding strategies to fund the Pleasant Street project, including money from the state through the MPO, and we also anticipate having a bond anticipation note ordinance in front of you next month that will be the next step in the overall strategy. So we appreciate your consideration of this and would be happy to answer any questions, and also point out that there is a lot of information about the funding plan for the Pleasant Street project, as well as the design work and other ongoing efforts on reimaginepleasantstreet.com.
Any questions? No questions? We'll move on to council to consider ordinance 390521, an ordinance creating the Noblesville surtax fund and imposing a motor vehicle license excise surtax.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Blight.
Thank you again. I will just reiterate my comments on the previous ordinance. Again, these are related efforts. Everything is the same except for the category of vehicles and the amount that's in the ordinance, and I just would appreciate your consideration of this proposal.
Questions? In 2 weeks. Miscellaneous number 1, council to consider resolution RC 1821, a resolution approving a purchase by the Noblesville Redevelopment Commission pursuant to Indiana Code 3674 19.5. Lindsay Bennett.
Good evening, council. Lindsay Bennett, city attorney. I am here to request approval for the Redevelopment Commission to purchase a property located at 439 South 6th Street. This property is being purchased in connection with the Pleasant Street project. It is being purchased by the RDC. The RDC will be purchasing the property for $375,000. That is slightly above the 2 appraisals that were done for the property. Those appraisals came back at $333,000. The RDC does have the authority via Indiana Code to purchase this property above those 2 appraisals, but they do need your approval for that. So tonight, I am just requesting that approval to purchase the property above the 2 appraisals.
Any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor.
I would move that we approve resolution RC-18-21 as submitted.
Second.
Is a hand vote. All those, we have a motion to approve RC 1802 and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0, resolution passes.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Council comments.
Peterson?
Yes, Mr.
Just want to reiterate our downtown. We've been downtown almost every weekend for the last month, and it is nonstop busy. Sundays, Saturday night. There's a lot of activity going on downtown, a lot of things happening, a lot of free entertainment. And so I just hope our community gets out and enjoys it and supports the local merchants.
There's a lot of activity during the week, too.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would just like to bring attention to a brand-new festival that is going to be taking place on Saturday,
Thank you.
May 22nd. It is the Indiana Peony Festival that is the brainchild of a local resident, Kelly McVeigh. Her desire is to hopefully turn Noblesville into the peony capital of the state of Indiana and have it become a tourist destination similar to like the Tulip Festival in Holland, Michigan. So their first festival is going to take place on Saturday, May 22nd in Seminary Park. They've heard on Facebook of over 400 people who are planning to attend, so that may be a huge weekend in downtown Noblesville. So it's an exciting new venture for our community.
And the peony is the state flower, so.
Peony is the state flower, correct.
Okay. Any other comments? Meeting adjourned.